Welcome back to Matt the Groundhopper channel, Chewing the Fat episode 7, and today we're going to talk about a club that is close to my heart, that is Gillingham Football Club and the ground Priestfield Stadium, and whether we stay at the ground or should we relocate to a new site. Let's check it out. Okay, I'd like to welcome Reese back to this channel and Chewing the Fat episode 7. Thank you, Reese, for attending. If you don't know who Reese is, I'll put an overlay now on his website. He's the very famous German Gills. Everybody I know watches his channel for the goals, including myself, and I do love your unashamedly biased commentary, which is absolutely just genius on all your videos. So thanks again for being with us today. So
yeah, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to come back, and I knew I would come back after the first one we had, Chewing the Fat, so it was always a pleasure to come back.
So today's going to be very much centred around Gillingham Football Club, obviously the team we both support, obviously. And we're going to talk about Priestfield Stadium today, Reece. So there's always been a talk, and it's been going on for many years. Do we relocate to a new stadium somewhere in Medway, or do we just develop what we have? Okay, that's a sort of mid to long term sort of future for discussion, and also I want to just get your idea on the town in as well as more of a short term thing. So just starting with Priestfield Stadium, there's always two arguments. There's one that people say, look, we don't fill out Priestfield, so why would we relocate? But the second argument is, well, we're never going to grow as a club unless we get new ground with new facilities. So I think both have got credible sort of arguments on both sides of that coin, really. So what's your opinion on Gillingham sort of relocating or staying where they are?
Well, it's a really interesting question. I suppose one of the things you could sort of direct towards is you look at other case studies where it's happened around the country, and then there are success stories of relocation, and there are unfortunately failed stories. And so the failed story that always springs to mind. I mean, there might be other factors as well, but Darlington is the one that always pops up because they were at Feetham's, I think, before they went to their new arena. And
Reynolds Arena, I think it was called, wasn't it?
Is that what it's called? Reynolds Arena in the end.
Well, I don't know about now, but it was after the Reynolds, the owner. Yeah.
Right, I see. But like now it's just a Sunday League rugby club. I think they just use that facility. That's it. Like and as a result of that, Darlington now exists down sort of the lower depths of the football pyramid, and so you can look at that as an extreme example. And then you look at somewhere like Brighton, and and it's a completely different story. I mean, Brighton again, different factors, and they used to play at the Goldstone ground, and then they came and played at Gillingham when they had no ground whatsoever, and then was at Withdean, and then eventually went to the Amex. So you can see the success story side there. But what's interesting about Brighton is that they don't have those extra facilities as much as what people talk about. So there are many other case studies that you could look into. But if we just focus really back on Gillingham, I can see the side of the argument. People say, yeah, we don't fill it every week. So what's the point of going to a new place out of town, maybe potentially, when we're not going to fill it every week, and we become up what they call these soulless bowls that always gets thrown around, and then might have a bigger impact on the team. I fall into the camp slightly of I understand the sort of the financial and economic impact of having a football stadium with other facilities that could generate a lot more income, because you could funnel that back into the football club and spend in other areas. But then that's always a risk, isn't it? And you have to make that attractive, because you think of like Milton Keynes, for example, they have all those facilities around the outside. They have shopping centres, restaurants, and so on. It's like a shopping mall almost around the outside, which funnels into the club. But they only fill 6,000 in there each week, and then that really has an impact on their atmosphere, and becomes the butt of a joke of many football league fans across the country as a result. It's a really interesting story, idea. So one of the things that I really value about where Priestfield is located at the moment is the fact that it's still amongst all of the terracing houses, and the town is around it. So it is definitely the beating heart of the football community within Gillingham. And I think back to what football grounds around the country have that really now. So like Luton Town does and Grimsby Town does. But there's a certain charm in that, and I think for me, that's how I remember Priestfield. That's how I grew up going to watching Gillingham at Priestfield. And for me, I used to live in one of those houses around the area as well. So for me, in terms of moving to another stadium outside of Medway, it has to be specifically for the right reason. I don't think it should be for the sake of we should get a new stadium because we would like to have a shiny new stadium. I think it should be for all the right reasons. I think it's a combination of, can we make it profitable externally away from football in that facility, and do we have enough bums on seats to be able to fill that? And I think you need to have a balance of those two things for the right decision to be made, whether we move or not, because it's one of those one door decisions. If as soon as you make it, you can't go back on it. That's it. You're committed to it. So I kind of talked quite a lot there. I realise that, but that's kind of where I sort of stand on it. I think probably at the moment I would emotionally and probably logically, Priestfield where it is currently is the right decision to stay, but that will change in the future, I'm sure.
Funny, because you mentioned amongst the terraced housing. If I was visiting Priestfield for the first time as a ground hop on my channel, as a neutral, I would say, no, this is great. It's amongst terraced housing. It's old school. I'll be sort of really praising how great it is, because I like the old style grounds as opposed to the new bulbs. You mentioned Darlington. I want to use a flip side. I want to talk about Wigan Athletic, because Wigan Athletic used to play at Springfield Park, and they were regularly getting crowds of 2,500 in the old Division 4, really low fan base. And obviously, the guy took over, who owned a sports company, built the new stadium, the DW Stadium, which I think it's called now. And obviously, they worked through the divisions. That was in the Premier League. They won the FA Cup about 10 years ago. But obviously, they've come down again. They're back in League One now. But they don't get crowds of 2,500 anymore. They get crowds of 9,000. They built up their fan base because the generational pull from having the new stadium means they've dragged from 2,500 to 9,000. And that's happened because of the new facilities, and I think in the new ground. Because if they were still at Springfield Park, they never would have got into the Premier League, wouldn't have even got to the Championship, and they would have had crowd. They'll be like Gillingham, languishing in League One, League Two, League One, Leagues, it's back and forth all the time. And if Gillingham ever want to break that mould and push on, I think reluctantly, I think they would have to go into a new ground, because we're always going to be a League One or a League Two club. Luckily, if we get to the Championship for a couple of years, if we're lucky, and that's it. That will be our ceiling, I think.
Well, I mean, it's a really interesting point, actually, because a lot of the reasons why maybe I like to call them fair weather football fans might like to go to a football stadium is because they have really nice facilities, and I think that generally would pull a lot more people in, and then hopefully those people would then get hooked on the club itself, and that's maybe the experience of Wigan. Because if you go to one, hardcore football fans enjoy those like Luton away days, those kind of stadiums, but there's a lot more football fans which. And it links to my second point, like the accessibility of the stadium is really important. And by accessibility, I mean having comfortable facilities where you can enjoy football and also the experience as a whole. And the other reason why sort of stadiums move out of city boundaries to a certain extent is to have that increased transport infrastructure accessibility. Brighton, for example, use Brighton again, is literally attached almost to a train station, and there are other grounds that have moved the way to do that, and that accessibility would be a big driver of people because it's ease getting to the stadium compared to if it is.
I must admit, though, it's at the button, but the getting out of Brighton after a match day is horrendous.
Oh, is it? I've done it once a long time ago.
Because the trains like once every 30 minutes is about 4 carriages to go back into Brighton from Fulmer.
There's a walk down there from Falmer. I think it's a Falmer, isn't it?
The queue was massive. It was like crowd control. But yeah, it's right next to the Fulmer train station. But it's not great. I think with a new ground, they could have a decent sized car. There's no parking in Priestfield, and you can't even park in the streets anymore. When I used to go years ago, you could park in Linden Road, Gordon Road anymore, because it's all permit parking. So you then luckily the schools do open up their playgrounds, and you pay like that's quite handy. You can just park in their car park. They make a bit of money. You can safely park your car because they lock the gates.
Mm-hmm.
That takes the sort of hassle out of parking, so that's quite good.
My old man parks up at Woodlands Road at the golf club, right at the top of the hill. Yeah, which is I mean, it's a fair distance walk in, but actually. One of the reasons why I quite like Gillingham being where it is located, Priestfield Stadium, is that when my dad walks, we used to always walk down that way. And there's something quite exciting about the long walk down the hill when you can see the floodlights just appearing in the distance, and it's nestled amongst all of the urban environment. It's really beautiful, actually, and that's quite exciting as a young kid, seeing that as you're walking down, and you see the fish and chip shop walking by, you smell that, and there is a charm in that, absolutely.
It's funny because I always tend to go from the other way. I always seem to walk from the train station into the ground myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen your videos. Of course, because you walk from that way, don't you?
I don't think I've ever walked to the ground from that way ever before. I've always
parked. Oh, really?
Every time, yeah. So that's quite interesting to think about. It's a experience going to the ground from different from west to east or east to west. But,
Yeah.
but
There's a lot of research about my profession's coming through. I'm a geographer by trade, so there's a lot of research about how like journeys through urban environments and how and the impact they have on your emotions and how they can differ between many people going to the same place, and that's a fantastic example of that. Your experience coming from the train station side versus mine sort of going down from the golf club, like how
it's,
we experience that varies, but it's all going to the same place, right? So
yeah,
it's really interesting.
I never thought of that really. It's very interesting. I think with the ground going forward as well. Obviously, the new owners they built their portfolio. They've earned their money in sort of property. I
Mhm.
understand that in sort of Florida. So I mean, the previous ownership they've always tried to. They talked about building a stadium. They in liaisons with Medway Council, but it's always getting external people in to give them advice. But the new owners, their DNA is property, real estate. So they already have the intuition of what needs to be done, as opposed to someone telling them what they need to do. And I get it; it's different in the USA to the UK about building things, planning permissions are slightly different, but the concept's the same. So that'd be interesting to see where they go forward because I'm sure they'll be looking at a new stadium, absolutely, and what can be with the stadium, whether it be a bar, a nightclub, a bowling alley, a KFC, whatever you want to put next to the stadium, or like secondary or tertiary going around,
Mm.
whether it be shops to make it pay on they own the freehold. Be interesting to see what sort of plan they come up with in the future. I'm sure they'll be working on something at some point because because it's in their DNA to move the club forward. Um, so I think in time you probably will move, but these things take a while. Pre-planning consultation, planning consultation, may go, goes to planning. It just these stages take forever. So
Yeah, and that and what you make a really nice point there. Yeah, the owners will be aware of that. The future of the club at some point is to move, right? Um, but I think one of the best things about the owners at the moment is very community centric. So in moving in if the discussion medium or long term is to move stadium, you know that the development of it, the tertiary that you talk about, the tertiary sort of income that you come will have to directly benefit the community, both for football and non-footballing fans. And I think I truly believe that both of our owners at the moment have that in their mindset to supporting the community. That's the most important part of their approach and the foundation of it. So that for me, I know when that eventually will happen, it will benefit the community
yeah,
and the community will be in the best of their interest.
yeah. But the saying is, if you shoot for the stars, you might reach the moon. And I just think that if we stay as we are, and I'm a traditionalist, I love the old ground. I talk a lot on my channel about I love old fashioned ground. I love them.
Mm,
But as a Gillingham fan, I want the club to grow and move forward.
mm,
We've proven that we can't really get out of League One with the current facility. We just can't. We might have a stint in the Championship again in the future, but there's a glass ceiling, and we're never going to break that glass ceiling unless we get better, larger facilities. And I just think if we get a new, I think we will. I think the attendances will go up. Personally, it's more
mhm.
family orientated, parking facilities. As I say, might have put a Pizza Hut or something next to. Whatever there is makes it more of a day out. I think we might increase the attendances because it's just a better day out for people. Maybe no.
You're absolutely right. And one of the whole things about football stadiums, it's more to do with the day experience and the football experience itself. And one of the things, obviously living in Germany, that the German stadiums get absolutely right is that they have more than just the football match going on. There's a whole. So my local team is MSV Duisburg, and so they're now in the fourth division. They were relegated last year, but in their massive stadium, around the outside, even part of the stadium, there are facilities which fan zone areas. There are bars and there are places to eat, and they are accessible throughout for the game, after the game, and during. So if you're a casual fan, you can go and enjoy the food and the environment there, and then football's a side product for you. But then vice versa, if you're a hardcore fan, you can enjoy the football and then before and after still experience the facilities surrounding it. You see, so that's one of the things I think the German system gets absolutely right is they keep it fan centric, but also catering for the casual fan as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I think to summarise this first part of the podcast, we'll be at Priestfield for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
But medium to long term, I'm sure they're going to have some sort of planning appraisal, some sort of plan going forward how we can move the club forward with the new ground, which I think will happen at some point in my lifetime anyway. So I
I
think
think so.
maybe between 5 and 10 years we might see something happen. I think maybe.
And that's exciting, right? As well. For me, that's
Yeah,
exciting.
I think yeah, we need to establish, just get through the division, become a good League One side,
Yeah.
and then push for the championship, and then we get the championship. Other clubs have proven they can do it, and we know, the population of Medway. I've said in many videos, 280,000 people. The population of Medway is bigger than many cities. It's bigger than Leicester, on a par with Derby. These big Southampton, and they've got or had Premier League clubs. So why can't Medway, Gillingham, representing Medway, have a club competing with a decent sized ground?
Absolutely.
And the kids at school that support Chelsea and Arsenal from birth, effectively, and I had many friends at school that used to support, Tottenham or West Ham. If they have a decent local club, well, I think, it's fashionable now to be a Gillingham fan and not unfashionable. They'll
Mhm.
start pulling Gills shirts and they'll become Gills fans. And then you gain that generation of fans like they did at Wigan all them years ago, as I mentioned earlier, instead of being Man United fans, they become Wigan fans. And once it's in your DNA and your blood, that's it. You're a fan for
Yeah.
life. So whether you're bottom league, League Two, or you're non-league, or you're in the Premier League, but yeah, so I think that's what needs to happen. It's a bit of a building bridge and building blocks, but I think we'll get there. I do think, I think there's a lot of potential, and obviously the owners, I'm sure they can see that as well. So
Absolutely. And that's why they're here ultimately, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely, and they put money into club, and they will be wanting a return on that investment because they're business people. They're fans, but they are business people. We need to remember that fact. Whereas we're fans, but they put their own money into the club, so they're going to want a return. And by doing that, is these building blocks we say, getting through the leagues, and then possibly a new stadium to really push us forward. But cool. Okay, that's the first part. I think we're in agreement, really, what's going on with that one. Second part, short term, Town End or the Brian Moore Stand. I've got a few stats for you very quickly. Right,
go
so
on.
stadium built in 1893. Okay, record attendance 23,002 against Queen's Park Rangers in 1948 in the FA Cup. Capacity, official capacity is 11,582, but it's not that because half the town is closed. So it's probably about 9,500, give or take. And it was redeveloped. I mean, as you mentioned before, I went to Priestfield as a kid. I remember the old Priestfield Stadium, but took a lot of redevelopments back in the mid 1990s. We had a new Rainham End, new Gordon Road stand, and Medway stand. And then the Brian Moore stand, the town end was, I think it was developed in 2002 or three because it was in the championship, was League One back then, Tier 2. We had to put an all-seater stadium effectively in place. And we had the temporary stand put up, which is still here to this day. 2022. I mean, it's made Gillingham famous or infamous because of the facilities. I've been to grounds where they're just as bad, but
Yeah.
you can have the whole scaffold look from behind compared to other grounds. So I get the look, but I think we're going forward. That end is pretty much closed. You have a few away fans sitting there. What do you think they should do with the town end going forward? I think should leave it or should we do something with it?
Oh, it's a good. It's a good question. First and foremost, I think it's been there so long; it should be a Grade 2 listed building. It's that kind of, it's had that sort of infamous impact on the club, and is voted the worst away day in the country, and it's just because of that ground, really. But here's and you probably know a comparison, or I'm going to make here is that Maidstone United recently had a new development behind their goal with this terracing, and I've stood it there actually a couple of times. And it's very impressive. And actually, with the drive towards safe standing, we can see at Shrewsbury, Meadow Lane, they have that at the back, and the fact that was terracing before the stand was there, like the old Priestfield was. There is for me some opportunity to develop that. Now, will it be safe standing? I don't know. Is there an opportunity to make a version of how high the Rainham End is? Yes, but even if it was a half version of that, I think it would make the ground complete. Is there a demand for it? And is it worth the money to invest in? Now, that would be a really contentious question for all fans. Actually, the side of me, I would be more on the side of I think they actually should develop that now because even though it has its history of what it is, I think there are certain things which are hangovers from previous ownerships and previous parts of the club that need to be changed, and sometimes the optics of the club can play a valuable part in its look, its capacity, and people's interest in going to the club, and sometimes just making that change adds a whole new fresh look to it. So for me, even though we might not fill it up as much as, let's say, we would want to currently, I definitely feel in the very short term something should be done about it to give it a regeneration and a much more permanent feel to that end. It's interesting because we're Gillingham playing Barrow at the weekend. There's this kind of like trying to get away home fans in that Brian Moore stand as well to show that there's actually a real need to have it. And I think Joe Comber, our director of the club, has said once we start having to use that as for home fans, then maybe there's a demand for it. But I would argue, without having the actual figures beside me, that it's more than just can we fill it on a regular basis. I think the optics of the club are also valuable, and having that fresh look might encourage, as we said in the short term for a new stadium, more people to come along maybe.
The safe stand, just on the safe standing, I never quite understand the safe standing argument because you stand up in non-league games all the time, and if
Right.
Wheelstone played Man United in the FA Cup and it was 6,000 complete sellout, well, why is that safe, but it wouldn't be safe in the Premier League?
I totally agree.
I don't get the argument with that because it's either safe standing, it's either all seated everywhere, or you can have terrace everywhere. I don't understand why it's not safe in the top leagues, but it's perfectly safe on a big day where you have a local derby. Aldershot versus Woking, there'll be a big crowd there.
Mm.
It's behind the goal. Why is that okay? But it wouldn't be okay, in the top league. So that's the first point about the terrace. I think they should change the town, and I think it doesn't look good on the tele. Optics is everything in life, and on your channel, German Gills, it's vast green. It looks
Yeah,
like
it's horrible.
Wentworth, yeah, and it's always empty, and it doesn't look good. And the rest of the stadium, to be fair, it's actually quite smart. It's quite a nice
Mm.
the other three stands, and it wouldn't take much to put that right because the scaffolding would come down in 2 days. There's already a concrete bar. I've had a look. There's already a concrete bar. My profession's coming out now. There's already a concrete base below the scaffolding, and it wouldn't take much to pour a new concrete base and pop up a steel portal frame terrace like they got at Sutton or many at the Maidstone, as you say. Bank it up a bit, so bigger than them stands. You could divide it 1/3, 2/3, a third away fans, 2/3 home fans, and put a roof on it. Obviously, um, there's a space to do it, and it won't be that expensive either. To be fair, it's the race because the facilities are behind, so they don't need to put facilities under the stand.
Yeah.
Get in the rain. It's just a very basic stand, and I think it would give it a more enclosed feel. I think the atmosphere will be much better. And if we do get into League One, which I'm hoping and predicting this season, there's some pretty decent games like Charlton and Birmingham are in that league now. Teams always drop down to League One, like Reading and Derby. They've all been there, Portsmouth, and they all bring 1,000 fans. So League Two, I get it. League One, there's some big games with some big crowds, and it'd just be nice to have it fill up. It'd be great.
And you're absolutely right. I think maybe whilst we're in League Two, it won't happen. But in League One, to accommodate a sizable amount of away support, then actually I can see the financial benefit of that in the first and foremost. But also, if we happen to stay in League Two a bit longer, why? I don't know the planning permission side behind it. I don't know anything about that. That might be the barrier. Who knows? But if we do manage to, let's say we do stay in League Two for a bit longer than we want to, we can still upgrade it as you described, but then just charge a tenner and fiver for kids for
Yeah,
everyone to go in there. And
yeah,
I think that would be encouraging to get people to use that stand, and then you're shooting towards your fans both halves. That's always advantageous as well. So there are lots even like psychologically it would also work. That's also beneficial for the team. So there are lots of advantages. I wonder just to do it anyway. And for me, how many years is it now? Like we're looking at 22, 3 years. It's been there. Might be longer. So for me, it'd be mid to the top sort of priority, somewhere around there. I
yeah.
would put
They
it.
don't need all the rainmen, the facilities underneath. They don't need that.
No.
They just need to put a very basic terrace stand with a roof because the facilities are already behind. Got a decent size space, so just improve and tidy it up a little bit, and then that will last us then for until we relocate at some point in the future. But it'll give it a good feel, enclose it, and people like standing up watching the games, and it'd be a good feel,
Hmm.
and it'll have a roof on, and you know, it's not good when you're sitting in the rain. I was at Newport and it rained hard and I was out in the open. It's just been appalling, like, if I'm being honest. Really
Yeah,
miserable.
yeah. I can't. It is like, and we've seen it before. I've seen people being snowed on there, rained on, hailed on, and windy, and it's just. I specifically remember a game we drew 0-0 with Millwall in about 2005, somewhere around there, and it absolutely hammered down over the top of them. And because they're Millwall fans, we go, yeah, it don't matter. But actually, just to sit there, it's not nice at all.
And the noise, by having an enclosed end, the noise, we lose it on
Yeah,
that. It's like having a no stander, effectively. You lose it when you have an open side on the ground. And I'm very critical of other grounds that don't actually have a stand full stop. We do have a stand there, but it's open, the noise loses. If you put a roof in and close it, it just keeps it, keeps it like a cauldron almost, And it'd be
yeah,
nice to shoot towards your home fans, towards the town end as well, which would be quite nice. So,
yeah.
different perspective of the game. There'd be some fans that have never, ever been in that town, ever. Um,
Do you know what? Right, I'm one of them. That's the only stand I've been in. Interestingly,
Okay. The last
it's the
time,
only,
10 years ago, when we won the old League Two under Martin Allen, I remember I've got photographs. I was sitting in that stand, and that's when
Mhm.
it was fully open. That was the last time I've been in it because it's just away fans now, not even open to the home in there, is it? But
No. So I spent most of my time in the Medway stand.
yeah,
17 seasons in there. I think season ticket holder, and a hand the sprinklings of Rainham and Gordon Road when I had to get individual tickets. But no, not one time in the Brian Moore stand.
yeah, yeah. Well, we need to campaign, don't we, to get this
I
stand?
think you're right.
Yeah, I'd happily give him some advice on building works, obviously for a fee.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
But,
yeah. Don't
yeah,
sell yourself too short on that one.
I don't think it doesn't need to be as complicated as it needs to. I think it could be quite a straightforward build, to be fair, behind that goal. But I think we're in agreement on both.
We are.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
That's nice that happens, isn't it? Yeah, it's because you know what, right? It's probably because it's about our club, isn't it? It makes it very easy to agree on most things. But you're absolutely
Actually,
right.
isn't that? Yeah, you just speak from the heart. It just flows,
Yeah.
doesn't it? But listen. Well, thank you, Reese. I really appreciate you being on this um latest episode of my podcast, Chewing the Fat, and we'll definitely get back on again because you've always got some decent things to say,
No, thank you. I appreciate that, and thanks for inviting me on. I mean, I love your channel. I love it. I love when you go over all the grounds. I like when you go up all to Scotland all the way down. I love them all. So keep up the good work, and yeah, more than happy to come on and chew the fat as you describe.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you, Reese. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check out Reese's channel. I'm sure you already have, but make sure you click on his channel because he does some pretty decent content. And I always say he's the best commentator around, and it's completely biased through Gills fan.
You're too kind.
Thanks anyway, and thank you to everybody, and bye for now. And there you have it. That is our opinion on the ground moving forward, and also the town end. Again, massive thank you to Reese for taking time to appear on this podcast. Always really appreciate his really decent contributions, really. Always interesting to listen to what he's got to say. Drop us a comment at the bottom. Let us know what you think, whether you agree or disagree. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and make sure you check out my ground hopping videos. Thank you again, and I'll see you at my next one. Bye for now.